Hey, guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another live stream. Hope you guys are ready to have some fun and talk about freedom. And what better day than on Mexican Revolution Day? So today is El Día de la Revolución. Um, and again, so that's what I'm going to be playing in the background. I always have something in the background playing while we have our discussions, talk about whatever we're going to talk about. And so today, they're having, this is semi-live, but this is actually, what's been going on or what's going on right now in Mexico City. So again, I know I dropped a video the other day about the protests that were happening out here just this past Saturday, and here we are Thursday, and well, the whole place looks completely different. All right, so and today is again they're celebrating El Día. All right. So today is the day of the Mexican Revolution. All right. And it's on November 20th. It's usually observed on the 17th of November or the third Monday of every November. All right. So Mexican Revolution Day is a very important day. And again, how ironic. Again, I don't know whether it was planned or not, but regardless, how the protests that were happening on Saturday were just a couple days away from the actual Revolution Day. All right. And again, this is the day that, that they used to commemorate the start of the 1910 uprising against the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz. Okay. It's a national holiday that marks the beginning of the Mexican Revolution, a tumultuous period that brought about significant social and political changes. Again, again, after the revolution, that revolution is what spawned modern Mexico. All right, because again, we've talked about it before. Every September 15th, 16th, but anyways, on the 15th, that's when they celebrate Mexican, again, not Revolution Day, but Mexican Independence Day. And so that's when Mexico was formed, and it became independent nation, separated from Spain. All right, and again, and this happened in the early 1800s. Again, a little bit after the American Revolution. So again, the American Revolution, America was founded in 1776, and Mexico was founded about, I don't know, I want to say like 50 years later, maybe less. All right. But again, they had a revolution. And so the revolution that Mexico had in 1910, again, every country is different and they have their own situation. But it was, again, Mexico's version, okay, of the American Civil War. So, in the United States, we had a civil war that basically changed the whole country, from that point on going forward in many aspects. Well, the same thing happened to Mexico in 1910, after the revolution. And so, long story short, I mean, again, out here, just like in many countries abroad, they do like to celebrate their history, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything. Now, again, it just depends on who, who's going to talk to you about this day. Some people hold it dear, some people not so much, but most Mexicans celebrate Mexican Revolution Day. So, but again, that's not what we're not going to be talking about that today. All right, that's not what today's live stream is about per se. All right, it was just a happy accident. All right, that I just already had this topic set aside in order for for me to talk about, and they just again it just coincided all together. I was actually going to talk about something completely different today, but that fell through, and so therefore I had to just go back to the archives and then just pick out a topic, and it just so happened to be this one. But because again I thought that I thought this happened already last week, but I guess they just waited until the actual day, which is today, and it's on a Thursday. So again, it's a 115th anniversary of Mexico since the revolution. Okay, so Mexicans, since the revolution. So, but anyways, so what we're talking about today is really, if you want to experience real freedom. All right, you move to Mexico. Now, me personally, you guys know my story. Well, some of you guys know my story. I know not everybody knows my complete story, but long story short, when I moved to Mexico, There was many things on my mind. There was many reasons why I ended up moving to Mexico. Um, when I was living in the USA, I just never felt at ease. I never felt peace. I just never felt real freedom. But since I didn't know anything else but living in the USA, well, unfortunately, for me, I thought that that was freedom. I thought that that was as free as you can really get. It wasn't until I actually moved to Mexico and I started living out here in Mexico that I realized what real freedom is and what living in real freedom actually looks like and feels like. And for me, it's just I fell in love with it immediately because it's just the open freedom that, again, for a lot of us that are Americans, it's this freedom that we think or we thought that we had, because I know things are completely different today in 2025. But at least when I was still around, kind of, long story short, the whole idea of freedom. You know what I mean? We always have this idea that we have all this freedom until we don't have that freedom. Something happens to us, something happens to a loved one, something just happens. All right. And then eventually you're in the system, and before you know it, you realize, oh my God, I really, really, there's no freedom in the USA. Now, again, like I said, now in 2025, I know most people realize that there is no freedom in the USA anymore. But again, living out here in Mexico, I've always felt free. Like I said, from the minute that I landed, it didn't take very long for me to realize, okay, that I was not going to get bothered by the police. I had the freedom here to basically live my life in peace. No one was gonna, bother me. No one was gonna tell me what to do. No one's gonna tell me how to act. I could do and live however I want to live. When the whole COVID pandemic thing happened, that was a big wake up call, because again, as I saw, my fellow Americans, my fellow Canadians, other people around the world, basically, going at each other's throat, for toilet paper. And then when I saw how people out here in Mexico were basically, it was all community. Everybody was helping each other, taking care of each other. If you wore a mask, they didn't care. If you didn't wear a mask, they didn't care. If you got, 30 shots, they didn't care. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Okay. Everybody had their own opinion. Everybody had their own way of going about life. But if somebody that was, they got 30 shots and had 13 masks on, all right, bumped into somebody like me, with nothing, we would still have a conversation. We would still, interact like two normal human beings. All right. There was never any, animosity or any kind of like, the stuff that was going on in the USA. And I could go on and on. Okay. There's just so many examples, throughout the years, and it's just constant. Throughout the years. Again, I show it in videos. Very recently, I was filming a video in, the hood, I guess, you know what I mean, of the city. And, long story short, some lady just came up to me and gave me a tamal, a free, some food. And she just gave me some free food. And she thought I was like some tourist that was lost. And anyways, but just like how nice she was, how nice the people are, the freedom out here. They really don't care. There's always all this propaganda on the TVs, on the internets, telling you one thing, but then, when you actually come out to Mexico, you come out to like any country, you start actually exploring and experiencing it, on your own, you quickly realize, oh, wait a minute. Everything has been completely wrong. So the same thing, I didn't know, about the freedom that Mexico actually had. And the best way I can describe it, again, for older Americans, it's basically the same freedoms that we had in the USA a very long time ago. And it's just incredible to see, the fact that, you don't even have, just your basic freedoms anymore in the USA. And that's why I talk about all the subjects I talk about, where, again, whether I'm covering the protest, just letting look at the freedoms that the people have out here. All right. Not just to protest. It's funny because, for example, the protest on Saturdays, you know, outsiders looking in, they just look at that one protest. If you live in Mexico, you realize that just like Washington, D.C. has protesters right outside, of the Capitol, basically almost on a daily basis, protesting anything and everything. Same thing here. This is the Capitol. Let's not forget that. Okay. So, there's going to be more protests. Okay. And it's not just that. There's protests here in lowly little Merida. daily. You know what I mean? Not daily. I don't want to say daily, but on a regular basis. All right. By the way, guys, they're doing some construction on the house next door, and they're blasting some music today because, again, it's Mexican Revolution Day, and so hopefully that's not coming through on the video too much. All right. Hopefully you guys are not picking up all that sound. My apologies. I can't really do much about that today. Again, another happy accident. Again, talking about freedom, right? So it is what it is. But anyway, shout out to everyone out there in the audience. Shout out to everyone watching and listening. Again, I apologize for the anyways, hopefully you guys are enjoying the visuals in the background. Let me see if I can. All right, I think that's it. That's the best I can do there to get the full picture. But anyways, hopefully you guys are enjoying that in the background. But anyways, and so, obviously, without all that stress, with all that freedom, okay, again, depending on who it is out there, there's a lot of Americans that are used to the life in the USA already, and that's the life that they want to live. So when they come out to a country like Mexico that is extremely free, all right, freedom, again, in every aspect that you see it every day. The thing is that the freedom that I'm talking about is something that is sometimes very hard to really describe because it's something that you see around you on a daily basis, and it's good, bad, ugly. So for example, people have the freedom here to just throw the garbage, on the street, and that's not good. That's no bueno, but that's a freedom. No one's going to go to jail for that. You understand? So it's so many little things. People have the freedom to just let their dogs loose in the neighborhood. People also have the freedom of speech. People also have the freedom, to confront an authority figure, all right, like a police officer, all right, without, any kind of risk of their life being in danger. There's it's many freedoms. People actually have a lot more freedoms out here, and many times, a lot of Mexicans. Again, this is why a day like Revolution Day is so important because Mexicans are constantly challenging authority. Okay. Now, again, whether or not government does its job, whether or not it's successful, that's another story. But they're in constant, in constant revolution mode. All right. And basically, the way they think is that, what, if you're not going to give us, as a government, as a people in power, if you're not going to give us what we want, we're just going to live how we want. We're just going to do what we want. And what are you going to do about it? So it's kind of like that mentality. So for a lot of Americans, or Canadians that might come out to Mexico, this fresh, idea of freedom, of don't be telling me what to do. You know what I mean? I'm telling, you know what I mean? Like if anyone's telling anyone what to do, it's gonna be me. But anyways, but that whole idea of like freedom, you know, um, is a welcome change because you coming from the USA, Canada, Europe, wherever you're coming from, and you see not just the tyranny, but you see all the people around you just basically, bending to the knee, kissing the boot, and just following orders, and you see everything deteriorating. And then you see a country like Mexico, which is doing the complete opposite. In fact, not only are they doing the complete opposite, but they're here celebrating. Again, the same president, okay, they were literally protesting the president the other day, a couple days ago, and right now, okay, she's celebrating the ability to do those protests. All right. How about them apples? So that's the thing. And again, you see it. I mean, they're kind of doing like it seems like they're doing a reenactment, okay, of the revolution right there. All right. And you see it's the people, okay, just like happened on Saturday, the people, basically rising up against the corrupt government. All right. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, it's extremely ingrained in the culture, and I've talked about it many times. Again, you depending on what part of Mexico you go to, will depend on how much they express that freedom. I've mentioned there are many parts of Mexico out there that have no government or no government intervention, no federal government intervention, no cartel intervention, no nothing. They govern themselves. Now, of course, they always have to be, constantly combating invaders, like government or cartels or other people. That's why, it's funny. Sometimes some of you guys in the audience ask me, it's like, hey, Jose, can you talk about those communities? Can I go live out there? It's like, no, you're not going to live out there. You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? They don't want any outsiders at all. You know what I mean? You're one of them. We're one of them. That kind of stuff. But look, all I'm saying is that it's all depending on the part of Mexico you're in, and depending on how, will depend on how how fiercely they protect that freedom, or they defend that freedom, or what have you. There are, many places in between. You know what I mean? Like I said, you go to a more modern city, modern areas, aka Mexico City, Guadalajara, Merida, Monterrey. There's a bunch of places out there. They're gonna be a little bit more modern and go down that path. But the more rural you go, and in certain areas like Oaxaca, I mean, come on, like I said, they're still looking just like those guys are looking right there, with their guns and defending whatever. All right, so yeah, yeah, it's a completely, different culture. And so out here, like I said, like I've said many times, no country is 1000% free. In order to really have freedom, you got to fight for that freedom. All right. And again, I live in a country here in Mexico in which, they're constantly defending that freedom. They're constantly challenging authority. They're constantly, having their voice heard. Doesn't matter, whether it's the left or the right, or the people in the middle, or the farmers, or the students, or the whatever it is. And it's a lovely thing, and again, many times they do, produce change for the better. Many times, it does, move the country in the right direction. At the very least, it doesn't allow the country to move in the wrong direction. All right. And that's a thing, unfortunately, in our countries, like I speak as an American here, we have gotten too comfortable. And the fact that, what happens is that the more comfortable you get, well, the more you let those freedoms, go by the wayside. And so in the USA, Canada, many countries, they prefer to have comfort over freedom. And so in Mexico, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, again, there's always going to be all kinds of people, okay, within the population. Okay. Obviously, there's people in Mexico that prefer comfort over freedom, but the majority prefer that freedom to do what they want, live how they want, challenge authority. Again, the system as is. Most Mexicans, again, like I said, prefer, okay, to live, under, again, protect that freedom. Most Mexicans prefer to defend that freedom and fight for that freedom, and constantly, again, make sure that that freedom stays intact. All right, so that's a thing. So all right, well, one second, I got a little water here. So shout out to everyone out there. See right there in the signs, it says derecho al trabajo, derecho a la huelga, basically saying, they're fighting for the right to protest. They're fighting for the right to assemble. They're fighting for the right to have a union. They're fighting for worker rights. So that's another thing too. A lot of people just don't understand. The revolution that happened in 1910 was a leftist revolution. Okay, was a liberal revolution. Okay. This is why you see the president, which is leftist, she is there, again, very, celebrating this day. And that's the thing too. A lot of people get confused. Mexico is not the USA. You got to remember that you got to get out of that bubble, and every country is completely different, and they all have history. They all got culture. How did they get from point A to point B? Again, I didn't know these things. I started to, learn these things as I, lived out here. But again, the 1910 revolution, what they're celebrating here, that revolution was a leftist revolution. But most of you guys already know that Mexico as a country is very conservative. And so, again, for most of its history, it's been a country, a government that's been leftist, or again, a leftist, kind of foundation, yet the people are conservative. Again, the people are very religious. The people are family oriented. The Mexicans are hardworking, all these conservative values. All right. Yet they have all these liberal values. When people ask me, it's like, hey, Jose, how do they treat gays in Mexico? It's like, bro, gay marriage has been legal here before it was legal in the USA. You know what I mean? The whole transgender stuff, bro. They got transgender populations in little villages out here that's been around before even the Spanish came. It's very different. So long story short, you know what I mean? Out here, the liberal values that they hold, okay, are freedom. Yeah, that's right. I know it sounds kind of crazy, right? Because of how the USA, Canada, all these countries have turned. But let's not forget, liberal values, okay? Liberal, what did liberal originally stand for? Live and let live. Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Liberal, liberal to do whatever, right? So it's that spirit, okay? That liberal spirit, okay, of live and let live. Don't tread on me. Sound familiar? Anyways, backed by extremely hardcore, conservative values. Meaning, we're not gonna give anything away. You gotta go work for it. All right. Real values and morals start at the home. All that stuff. So it's a dichotomy because that's what the country is. And so fast forward to where we are today, the last president and now this president, they're more left leaning. And for the first time in Mexican history, they are, again, doing what, well, leftist presidents would do, which is do what? What did FDR do for the United States? Oh, he had Social Security. Oh, he started to create a bunch of, social programs. And so that is basically what the past president and what this president are doing. All right. And some people like it, some people don't. It is what it is. All right. Now again, Mexico, even before they had any kind of liberal president or liberal leaders, they already had free healthcare. They had pensions, but they got rid of pensions. And they started doing the system that they did in the USA. With 401ks and stuff like that. So when the new leftist president came in, AMLO, he brought back pensions. All right, government pensions, meaning that grandma gets a pension for being a housewife, or you get a pension. Doesn't matter where you work for. If you work again, Social Security, like everybody gets Social Security in the USA. All right, that kind of thing. So again, it just depends on. Again, I am neutral. I really don't care. You know what I mean? As long as Mexico stays the way it is, which it is. Again, they celebrate, their freedom, and they celebrate their, was it their mistrust towards government, and all that stuff. I mean, they celebrate that. They're constantly challenging the government, and so on and so forth. The government does not have as much power here as they do in the USA or Canada, and that can go on and on. So, to me, it's a whole, it's just a whole package. It's not just the fact that, like, look, I was talking about this in a recent video, where I mentioned, what is my, I was telling you guys, what my favorite thing about Mexico is. All right. And what my, by the way, I think, did I publish that video already? I think I did, right? Yeah, I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did. Anyways, my favorite, well, my favorite thing about, yeah, I don't want to be spoiler alert. Anyways, what my favorite thing about Mexico was, and for most of you guys that have been following me long enough, you guys automatically think, oh, freedom. But the reality is that my favorite thing about Mexico is the people. And why do I pick the people? Well, because the people are the ones that make sure that we have those freedoms. That's it. It's as simple as that. All right. We ain't got no freedoms unless we got the people there to defy, unjust government, unjust laws, unjust whatever. You know what I mean? In the USA, something unjust happens and people just take it. No Vaseline. They just take it. Out here, come on, man. Even if they pass it and make it a law, make it a whatever, people are just, it's voluntary. You know what I mean? Like, no. If enough of us say no, it's not gonna happen. The end. You know what I mean? And that's it, you know what I mean? And and that's what I love about that, you know what I mean? That's what I just love about Mexico. And it's just a constant defiance. Again, they're some of the friendliest people, if not the friendliest people. They're again, like I said, top 5 friendliest people on earth. But at the same time, it's like, as the saying goes, F around and find out. And again, some of the fiercest fighters out there, are Mexicans, so it's just, it is what it is. And so, but again, it comes very deep rooted. Okay, because you got to remember, like, let's just look at the history of Mexico real quick compared to the history of the USA. In the USA, you got to remember, when the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, it was just a bunch of people that were getting kicked out of England because of the religiousness. Okay, because remember, a lot of context. Okay, but long story short, they were seeking religious freedoms. There was a lot of people with a lot of brand new religions, and they were driving the King of England crazy. So he was starting to kick everybody out, and everybody started making their way towards Plymouth Rock on the Mayflower or whatever. And it was just a bunch of crazy people, okay, with crazy religions. All right. And they were the ones, they were just seeking religious freedom. That's how, you know, America was founded. Okay. Eventually, obviously, it turned into something else. But Mexico, completely different. In Mexico, let's not forget, okay, that when the Spanish came here, remember when the Spanish came here, they came to conquer. The name for the Spanish were the conquistadors, the conquerors. Okay, so they came out here to conquer, number one. All right, number two, when they got here, they realized, oh, wait a minute, there's like, another conqueror already here conquering the Americas. So again, the Spanish came with the Spanish Empire literally to, clash with the Aztec Empire. Okay. All right. All right. And like I said, it's a deep history. Okay. So remember, a lot of Mexicans have Aztec blood and they got that Spanish blood. And right from the get go, okay, it was two extremely violent societies that clashed and made babies, and well, the rest is history, I guess. But there's always been a completely healthy defiance of anything, of everything in Mexico, okay, let alone Latin America. But that's just talking about Mexico, and the USA was not like that at all. It was completely different how it was founded. All right, so again, just right there, you know what I mean, the blood that courses through the veins of the people is completely different. All right, and sure, you know what I mean, America once stood for freedom, but how long did that really last? You know what I mean, think about that. Just look at American history. How long did that really last? But then look at a country like Mexico. Look at this. You know what I mean, they're they're constantly becoming, I don't know, in my opinion, they're constantly defending it more and more and more. Again, I understand we're living in an age in which we all feel like we have less and less rights and so on and so forth because of technology and the digital age. But look, long story short, I feel a lot safer. I feel a lot more secure. I feel a lot better about living out here than I do about the USA these days. All right. So, anyways, all right. I want to read a few comments, all right? Because I know I'm go off on a tangent here. But anyway, shout out to everyone out there and welcome, to the show. And so yeah, so that's the thing too. So Watery Right says there really isn't much comfort here, in the USA. Every time you leave your humble abode, it's a crapshoot. Yeah, so that's the thing. And so like it's funny because now these days, okay, so I've talked about it before as to like the whole American dream and American ideals. So one of the awesome things about the USA during its heyday, during the golden age, I guess, was the fact that it was able to export that freedom. It all started from the very beginning. Again, 1776. We were the first nation, to be found. Sorry. Anyways, that's the other channel. Anyways, we're the first nation to be founded. Okay, basically, free men. Okay, defeating tyranny in order to establish, a free nation of free men. And then from that point on, other nations started to follow suit. Okay, France, I think, was number two, eventually Mexico, and so many other countries were, again, eventually founded on the same kind of ideals. And so, again, so right off the beginning, from the USA, becoming a country, it helped establish all these countries around the world. Now, fast forward to, again, the 1900s, right? The 20th century, I guess, right? The 1900s. America eventually, after World War II, started to export that whole idea of the American dream as well. You know what I mean? Now, all over the world, you're going to see a kind of copy paste situation. You know what I mean? Where many countries, again, like Mexico, are much more free than the USA was. But when you look deep down into how they got there, well, they just copied, what the USA did. Now, what happened to the USA and Canada? Where did they lose their way? Again, that's another conversation for another channel. You can follow me on my other channel there. But they did. Okay. The point is that, again, they did. They lost their way. But a country like Mexico has not lost their way. again, there have been, many things along the way, all right, that might have caused, or are trying to disrupt and trying to, create that same kind of scenario out here in Mexico, like they do, like they have in the USA, Canada, Europe. But again, the people are too strong. The culture is too strong. There's too many things going in Mexico's favor. And again, they're constantly revisiting history like they are right now, like they do every year, multiple times throughout the year. So they're very, very aware of their past, and they're very, very again educated on recent history as well. And so that's why, again, for many Mexicans, well, when I see all the things that are happening, the digital ID or the cashless or the this or whatever the hell, it's like, or the protests, none of that stuff is really going to affect Mexico, okay, in the ways that it's going to affect the other countries. Because as I said, in other countries, they were more than happy, trade that freedom away for comfort, and they would rather just have total comfort and let the government just tell us what to do. But out here in Mexico, it's not like that at all, because not only have they never been able to really trust the government, but they're constantly, again, remembering as to why they don't trust the government. Okay, reminding the people as to why we can't let government have total control, and so on and so forth. All right. And so when I hear things like, oh, Mexico's going to turn into communism, it's like, bro, have you been to Cuba? Have you been to the USA? Have you been to Canada? Have you been to, like, Venezuela? Have you? Come on, man. Come on. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even anywhere remotely close to communism. The USA and Canada are a lot closer to communism, all right, than Mexico is by far. I mean, it's not even, you know, um, it's not even measurable how far the distance is. And again, think about it. As I mentioned before, the 1910 revolution, the one that they're celebrating right now, was a leftist revolution. Okay? So think about it. If Mexico has not become communist in 115 years with an extreme left government from the get-go, why is it going to turn communist today or tomorrow or in the near future, when they're not even anywhere remotely close to that? All right. Again, think about where the USA was, back in 1910. We were about to enter World War One. And then eventually, again, what happened? You already know what happened. We had the Great Depression, we had FDR, all right, super leftist president, providing all kinds of leftist social programs for the people. Again, a lot of them that are still in place today. And I could go on and on. So again, when during that same time in Mexico, that was not happening at all. Not even anywhere close. So yeah, I mean, Mexico got rid of slavery before the USA ever did. In fact, the big battle with Texas was because eventually, so again, Mexico was the first one to get rid of slavery. Eventually, the USA got rid of slavery, but Texas still did not want to get rid of slavery. All right, from my understanding. But anyways, well, long story short, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, Mexico, has been a leader, for on in many social stuff for a very long time. So, um, yeah. Anyways, let me read a few. D Mouse says, "Got here late. Howdy, howdy. Hey, how's it going? Shout out to shout out to you, brother. What the heck is so controversial about bike lanes? I don't know, man. The same thing that I lived in Seattle. I lived all over the USA, and it's the same controversy here as it is anywhere else. Okay, some people, want a car. What is it? What is it? Want a car friendly environment, and other people want a bike and a walking friendly environment. So it's just that it's the same battle that happens anywhere else in the world, basically. So I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. So let me see. So anyway, shout out to everyone out there. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the show and enjoying the little parade, the revolution parade. Pretty interesting to see, modern arms, modern, like that's a modern Jeep, modern tank, modern whatever, all that stuff, the modern military alongside the people there. And again, I mean, think about it. Even the stuff with the cartels and all that stuff. That's all part of that. Those are the banditos. Those are revolutionaries. Those are the people that, again, they basically just took matters into their own hands. The government is so corrupt that, what, we're just gonna do our own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's a thing that's been going on for a long time, and it's not gonna end anytime soon, at all. Period. End of story. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, that's the thing. And Mexico's a big country as well, just like the USA. So, I mean, think about it. Like, how different is Florida from California, from Texas to Idaho to Washington State to Washington D.C. to New York to Connecticut to Boston, Massachusetts, right? And I can go on and on. You know what I mean, right? I mean, in New York alone, just go to New York City, and then go to Buffalo, New York. And so, I mean, like, the differences and how, and difference in mentality and politics and so many things. So it's the same thing here. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that as well. And I mean, you're looking at it right there. You know what I mean? Like, you see, it's like the people, just the regular people going up against the government. It's interesting. It's like the first. Oh, okay. So those right there are the first martyrs, martyrs. I don't know. I'm saying it wrong. But I guess the first ones, to confront the government back in the day. Interesting. Cool. Peaceful Luna says they are protesting right now. Yeah, cool. Interesting. I mean, I'm not against any of that. You know what I mean? I am for power to the people, man. That's it. You know what I mean? I am not a big government guy. I am not again, this is why I live in Mexico. You know what I mean? I'm not a fan of authority, and especially unmeasured authority and things like that. Or I forgot, I don't got the right words here per se, but you know what I mean. Unchecked authority. I'm not for unchecked authority. I am not for big government, or I'm not for big power authority. None of that stuff, you know what I mean, at all. I'm more of the power to the people, but again, it's not just the power to the people, because again, the people always look for a leader, the people whatever, but it's like the whole idea of everyone out here is a community, but at the same time everyone is independent. You follow me? And it's expected that you got to live your own life, do your own thing. Everyone's gonna, whatever, you don't, no one's gonna judge you per se, but anyways, you do your own thing, live your own life, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do with your life, or how again, you might be in a community where you might have one mentality and everyone else has another mentality. They're not going to just shun you away per se. They'll still help you out if you need help. That's the thing. It's stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where in the USA, if you're on the right and you need help from the left, they're just gonna burn you to the ground, and vice versa. You're on the left and you need help from the right, they're gonna just burn you to the ground. And out here, not so much, man. Out here, again, they know how to put certain things aside, political leanings, ideologies, things like that. Again, remember, there's a lot of people that are very religious. Okay, and there are people that are not that religious, and yet people still all get along. You know, and again, it's not that they have to agree. It's not that they have to. But that's the thing. It's just like they nope. No, some noise out there. Anyways, out here they really protect your freedom of thought, your freedom of man. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, yeah. Anyways, what was I saying? Forgot. Oh yeah, yeah. Anyway, I don't got my sound effects because I got this thing playing right here. Um, all right, let me read a few things. Um, oh, thank you, big fan of the channel. I appreciate that. Man, I forgot, man. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Ay, ay, ay. Oh my gosh. What was I saying? I forgot. Anyways. Mm. Oh, okay. Cassandra says, you are correct. The last slaves were in Texas. That's the reason why we have the Juneteenth celebration. Oh, so is that what the Juneteenth is? Oh, okay. I've always, yeah, I don't know. The Juneteenth, I don't think existed when I was still living out there. I don't know. Whatever. All right, now I know what Juneteenth is. Thank you for all the kind words. Yeah, man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm having a brain fart.
En
Yeah, I guess
1914
we'll
se unió
play this for a
a los
minute
carrancistas.
until I figure
Esta,
my next thing to
este
say.
personaje fue una
Was,
enfermera y es la que tienen, bueno, ahorita
man, where did I leave off, man? Holy shit.
con
Maybe someone in the chat can help me
acompañó
out.
a los heridos. Eso es
Let me
lo que
see.
resalta ahorita
I'm
de
just
este
reading some comments
personaje
real quick.
en esta época
But shout out to everyone
inicio
out
de la
there.
revolución, que fue la primera enfermera
Oh, right.
que acompañó
That's what I was saying. So yeah, out here in Mexico, your business is your business. You know what I mean? Thank you, Cassandra. Appreciate it. Out here, your business is your business. No one cares what you do behind closed doors. All right. You do you live your life. If you want to have orgies, if you're gay, not gay, whatever, you want to smoke, you want to drink, you want to whatever. Doesn't matter. You do what you do. But you got to respect everyone else's space. So don't be doing no crazy stuff on the street. That's why you're not going to see gay pride parades, which by the way, you still do, but they don't get out of hand like they do in the USA or Canada because, hey, think of the children, think of the families. Come on. You know what I mean? Like, just have some, have some respect. It's as simple as that. Because it's not like, I mean, think about it. They could easily have, by the way, I know it's as I'm saying this, like I'm thinking of, certain events and certain parades and Mexicans they have scantily clad naked women. But look, the point, so much for morals, right? Anyways, but anyway, have you seen like the Mexican weather ladies and stuff? Anyways, all right. But the thing is that at the very least, you know what I mean? Like I said, they let you live your life, but at the end of the day, you do have to have some sort of, respect, for your community, for the people around you. And, again, as long as you're not hurting anybody, bothering anybody, things like that. So, like, for example, my neighbors right now are making noise because they're doing some construction on their house. In the USA, I could probably, cause a ruckus, call the police on them, whatever it is, right? But out here, I can't do anything. I can't do anything. Sometimes, the guy is working on his house like at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I get it. You know what I mean? He's just getting home from work. He probably doesn't have time to work on whatever he's working on, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, hey, if it's going past 12 on a Tuesday night, we got a problem. And again, it's not the cops are going to show up. No, the neighbors are going to show up and be like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Bah, 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 bah. That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's just normal, regular decency. So, most people, you know what I mean? Like they might not appreciate that the guys, with a bandsaw at 11 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night. But you know what? They think to themselves, all right, I know Bob, I know he's probably tired from work. He's working on yada, yada, yada for whatever. I'm not going to bed yet. You know what I mean? I'll give him some time, pop, 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 pop. And again, it's just everybody's, you follow me? That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? There's just so many little things like that where people out here know how to live with each other. And they've had to learn to live with each other because, like I said, there's no police that are there to police anything per se, no government, no nothing. The people have to police themselves. The people live in anarchy, all right, without real rulers, and that's the thing, and so that comes at a price, and that comes at again in many things. Now again, there's off sometimes there are people that are disrespectful, or sometimes there are bad hombres. Sometimes things happens, and that's where the people step in and they take care of business. Like for example, there might be the neighborhood drunk or the town drunk, going around from house to house, stealing stuff, is stealing a TV, stealing, a phone, stealing crap, okay? Just to feed his habit. And they keep trying to, get the police involved, and the police don't do nothing. So the people just go on ahead and they take care of it. Not that they, eliminate the guy, but, they take care of it. They'll grab him, they'll tie him to a pole, and then all the grandmas in the neighborhood are gonna beat him with a sandal. Whatever. But that's the thing, and it's like until the cops get involved and be like, hey, what are you doing? Hey? And then then the cops will arrest him, and then maybe the cops will take him away so he doesn't get, he doesn't get, what is it, like, beat up, with sandals from grandma and things like that. So, so it is what it is. A lot of street justice out here. But again, that's the thing too. That's why a lot of people behave, because they also know that if they don't behave, well, there's going to be a lot of consequences. All right. So that's the thing. And many times, when the bad hombres get caught, by the people, they're actually praying and asking for help for the cops, all right, themselves, all right, the bad hombres, hey, save me from the people. So, I mean, that's the people, you know what I mean? And so, like, when you, even when with the whole protest thing on Saturday, again, I talked about it. I already did a whole video on it. There's a lot of theories, there's a lot of, whatever, from all sides. I know that there is a lot of dissatisfaction in the country. I also know that there's a lot of people that back the president. There's a lot of approval for the president. But again, both of those things can exist at the same time. People that are dissatisfied and people that are satisfied. So but that's what I was, basically kind of talking about. You know what I mean? Just talking about that. And there's always going to be that. And so, anyways, I forgot it again. I mean, I don't know why I'm losing my train of thought so much today, man. Jeez, maybe this coffee is not strong enough. I'm having a lot of brain farts today for whatever reason. My apologies, guys. Sorry. Is it Mercado? Mercado Animales says, I lived in Mexico. Lived in Mexico 14 years. I loved it except for the cartels. A friend was just kidnapped. I started to hear that. Your business is your business, except it's also the cartels. Yeah, again, it just depends on what part of Mexico you're in. Yeah, there are parts of Mexico. Again, most of the people watching this video, watching videos like mine, watching channels like mine, you're not going to be living anywhere close to those areas that are being affected. But for many Mexicans, cartels are a problem, and depending on the area you're in. It's not all areas of Mexico, but I totally understand. I've talked about it before. Most foreigners, in fact, the majority of foreigners, have nothing to worry about when it comes to that. But unfortunately, for locals in many areas, it's still a problem. So it is what it is. So let me see. So let me see. Da, 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 da. Thank you for showing us this event. It's awesome. Example of living history parade. Yeah, exactly. I love this stuff. I'm not going to lie. I've never really seen this parade per se. I've seen other parades, but I've never seen the Revolution Day parade. And this is pretty cool because, again, they're basically going history lesson through history lesson through history lesson. I know I'm just talking over this, but if you spoke Spanish and you were able to listen to the actual broadcast, obviously it's like a parade. So they're saying, okay, this is the first battalion of blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, these people represent, when they signed the whatever. It's like, oh, look, those are the first people that were protesting for worker rights, things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's really cool because we don't do anything like this in the USA. In fact, if you want anything remotely close to this in the USA, you have to go to Williamsburg, Virginia, or something like that, right? And pay for the experience, of something kind of close to this, have one of those Civil War reenactment thingies. Um, so yeah, it is really interesting. Yeah, again, like how again, so that's another thing too. Again, this is why, there's a big difference between countries like the USA and Canada and Mexico, because in Mexico they still celebrate, relive, teach the history all the time. I mean, they're literally celebrating it right now. Um, and so in the USA, they don't celebrate any of this stuff anymore. They don't talk about the past as much as you would like. Again, they're talking about other things, teaching other things, but they're not really teaching the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. They're not teaching anybody about any of this stuff. Look at how many people gather, how many people watch these parades. Again, today's Thursday. People, it's a regular day. It's a regular work day. It's not. I mean, the holiday was on Monday, from my understanding. Today's just a regular Thursday, and yet, look at the importance that they still put on things like this. So, it is sad, to see, how they just don't celebrate the history. anymore in the USA. And again, if you don't know your history, you don't know your past, that's the quickest way, to, fall back under tyranny or fall back into, the horrible situation that everyone was fighting for to begin with. I mean, to me, some of the saddest things I see is when I see like in the USA, when I see a World War II veteran in the USA, and you see them so sad and crying and upset because it's like this is not what we fought for. Where again, here in Mexico, it's a complete opposite. You know what I mean? They're still fighting the American empire. They're still fighting their own government. They're still fighting tyranny from abroad, from the corporations. From I mean, they're still fighting. They're fighting the good fight. All right, and one of the bad things that the relationship between the USA and Mexico has done has been the fact that it has brought a lot of guns into Mexico. But again, from somebody that is, again, I'm not a gun freak. I don't like guns. I'm from the city. But I realized as I learned about my history and my past, the importance of the Second Amendment. And in Mexico, many people are armed, and they're ready to take up those arms, whether the cartel, whether it's against a cartel, the government, or whatever. And these are the things that they're talking about. Because even though guns are technically illegal in Mexico, because again, remember, after this revolution, the leftist revolution, they basically made guns illegal, but under the Constitution. Okay, the Constitution, everyone still has the right to bear arms. But what I'm saying is that because of the drug trade, because of the drug war, well, that's why there's so many guns in Mexico. And, those guns are needed to protect the rights. It's as simple as that. Again, for anyone else out there that's from Canada, Europe, Australia, any country out there where they got rid of guns and the government just became extremely tyrannical. Well, you already know what's going on. You've lost all your rights and you got no way to defend yourself. Period. Mexicans have a way to defend themselves, okay? Like I said, you know this, okay? Because of the drug war and the cartel wars. You've seen the cartels, they got tanks, they got planes, they got drones, they got missiles, they got it all. They got it all right? Let alone, all the arms, again, all the weapons that are in the country, all over the country, that people have. And, I'm not talking about like just the cartels or the government. I'm talking about just regular people that have to have it. Again, as Mercado de Animales, was saying, there's certain areas of Mexico where people have to have guns no matter what. They gotta defend themselves and their family. So long story short, you know what I mean? Like that's the main thing that you need in order to be able to defend yourself and to rise up, against tyrannical anything. All right. So let's not forget that. So again, one of the benefits, that from the drug war, the only benefit is the fact that, at the very least, Mexico, again, it doesn't have as many weapons as the USA. USA is number one by far from my understanding. But I mean, Mexico's right there, right next door. You know what I mean? Right second, third place, whatever it is. So, and that's a major component to that. Again, because I'm not a gun guy. You know what I mean? Again, I come from the city. I've seen a lot of deaths. Friends, family, you name it. You know what I mean? I've talked about it, whatever. But so I've never really been a fan. But when I started educating myself on history and on so many things, especially once I left the city, I was like, oh man, yeah, I totally understand. You know what I mean? Like it's like the Second Amendment is the reason there's a reason why it's the Second Amendment. Okay, because when the First Amendment fails, you need to have the Second Amendment, to protect the First Amendment. Okay, so it is what it is. But yeah, it's interesting. Who was it? Holly Sturge, something says that we have a reenactment at the Alamo when I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and I always appreciate it since it's not common in the States. Oh, cool, cool. Ah, yeah, yeah. I would assume Texas has a lot of that too. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I know there's a bunch of reenactments, through the South, right? I mean, I'm from the South, I'm from Florida, and Florida, we weren't necessarily involved per se in the Civil War, but I've traveled, you know what I mean, and I've been through the South, you know what I mean, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, you name it, right? And for sure, up and down the East Coast, and yeah, there are places where they still celebrate that history. But again, those are the same places that are, the ones that are very anti-government. The same places. Man, not so much these days, right? But anyways, that's another story for another day. Um, a Bangor says, B Bangor says that the problem here in Canada is that the government keeps tightening their grip on us. The new rules, the new laws, yeah. Look, the thing is that that's a problem everywhere. And so, look, right now, they're trying to do some of that here in Mexico. But what are the people doing? They're pushing back. They're pushing back. And that's the thing. That's why I cover the protests. That's why I talk about these things, because that's the problem in Canada. That's a problem in the USA. That's a problem in many of these places. People are not pushing back, and not just not pushing back, but everybody's divided. Everybody is divided. And it's not just divided, black and white, or, left and right. Nah, you guys are divided into, it almost, what is it? Divided into like a million pieces out there. All right. In both countries. And so a nation divided is never going to be able to stand up. And so that's the thing about Mexico too. Even though Mexico is divided in certain aspects, political, religious, there's division. People are different. It's part of the culture. Again, the individuality, everything I was saying already. So it's all part of the culture already. It's all part of the whole situation, right? Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought with the gizmo barking. My apologies. Was it? Oh yeah, yeah. But what the thing about Mexico is that they come together. They come together to protest. Look, the thing about the protest, that happened on Saturday that was very unique, is that usually when there's a protest out here in Mexico, it's usually just one group of people, supporting the thing they're protesting. The thing that was unique about this protest, again, we know that there were saboteurs in there. We know that there were paid actors. We know everything already. But there were real protesters as well. Okay? There were protesters there that had no political affiliation. Okay? There were protesters there that voted for Claudia. There were protesters there that hate Claudia. You know what I mean? And I could go on and on. But it was a mix of everybody. This is why, all right, the government, the federal government, the president was a little worried at first. All right, because he was like, oh, this is everybody. But it really wasn't everybody. But look, long story short, it was a mix of people. There were people that were protesting again because their farm got taken away by the cartel, or their family got kidnapped or killed, and the government or the police, and nobody did anything about it. Other people that were protesting, the gentrification stuff. You get what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like protesting, what? There were people protesting everything there. There were people just protesting the government, nothing else. People protesting the president. Or again, the people on the right. There was a lot of people from the right. Again, I mentioned that in the video, but people from the right that were there. And so it was a mix of people. But long story short, everybody can get together. This is not the first time they've gotten together, like I said. But it was, unique to this particular protest, okay? Because there's a lot of people from all, factions, from all kinds of different situations. And that's what, again, right now, what they're celebrating. They're celebrating that the people were able to put their differences aside for a minute and get together against a more, vicious evil, a more bigger problem, which was, again, the tyrannical government that was in Mexico at the moment. And so right now in the USA, Canada, many places out there, you guys are having your situations out there. Is anyone going to rise up against the government? No, no one's going to rise up against anything. If they haven't already, they're not going to. In fact, they're only going to. Look, I've said this many times because I study history. The one time that the people, really do rise up is when there's no more food and there's no more circus. Okay, no more bread, no more circus, no more entertainment, no more food. Entertainment is lacking these days. I mean, come on. I can't even watch NFL games anymore. I can't even watch NBA. It's all rigged. It's all whatever. But anyways, that's one. So the entertainment is lacking. And then on top of that, they just took away food stamps. They just took away food for millions of people in the USA, and nobody did anything. So, like I said, it really wasn't until COVID going forward, but since that point on, and I realized nobody's going to rise up, nobody's going to do anything. They're just going to sit there and take it. Well, it hasn't changed. It's just gotten worse. All right, and unfortunately, that's a problem. That's a problem with a lot of people. They don't want to swallow that hard truth that is not going to get any better. Okay, in the USA or Canada or anything like that. It's just not going to get any better because in order for things to get better, the people have to say enough. They got to rise up and they got to make that change. And that's not going to happen. Even if you wanted it to happen, you don't even have guns, at least in Canada. So, so yeah, that's the thing. It's at least like I said in Mexico, I've seen it multiple times. I really saw it during COVID, where everybody, there was a lot of people that were, very fearful of COVID. There was a lot of people that didn't believe anything about COVID, but at the end of the day, everybody was able to live together, get together, and do their own thing, and just politely agree to disagree. Like for example, I would meet old people out here that again they got all their shots, they got all their mask on, they got all the space suit, the whole whatever, but they would still talk to me, they would still treat me even though they knew I had nothing. All right. Nobody ever disrespected me, nobody, and so I did the same thing. When I would see somebody with a mask on or whatever, all that stuff, even though internally it bothered me, I didn't say anything or care, you know what I mean? Like in that sense, because they didn't care about me in that sense. I mean, they cared about me, they loved me. In fact, they would look at me and they would be like, "Oh, that poor guy, he's so crazy." And they would say like a blessing, they would say like a prayer for me, you know, that I would survive. But that's it, that's it. And just like I would, mutually, again, just be nice to them and what is it like? I would listen to them and I would again be respectful and be all that stuff because they weren't forcing anything on me, just like I'm not forcing anything on them. That's live and let live. At the end of the day, another thing that happened, as the years went on, a lot of people that believed differently than me, they all of a sudden started to come up to me or to my wife, because her friends or whatever, and they would just say, "Man, he was right. Fuck, hey, we were sorry, for not believing you. Man, I wish I would have listened to you, Jose." Whatever it was, and it's like, man, I don't even want any of that. You know what I mean? Like, thank you, I guess, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying the level of respect, the level of introspective, you know, um, self awareness that a lot of Mexicans have out here. It's incredible. And to me, it's like, man, it makes me emotional sometimes. It makes me so happy, to be able to live in a place where, people are civil. Even though we live in close to anarchy, people are more civil here than I've ever experienced in the USA. I'm sorry. It's just the truth, you know what I mean? And I lived in the USA again. I was born in 1981. And I seen a lot of stuff out there. And like, I don't know, man. To me, it's just a different way of life out here. But it all starts with the people, man. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, there's no freedom without people. There's no freedom without the constant education, the constant challenging, the constant everything. You got to put that into play. It's like you got to put that into practice. And so most Mexicans, put that um, protection of that freedom into practice all the time, daily almost. Again, a lot of times when you see a lot of vendors out there, when you see, okay, so when I'm doing my videos and I'm walking around certain areas and you see vendors all over the place, a lot of times those vendors are there illegally, okay? And they have no papers, no nothing, no whatever, but they just show up every single day, even if they get kicked out. And not only do they show up every day, but then more vendors show up and more vendors show up. And long story short, before you know, you got a bunch of people that are just going to show up no matter what you do to them. And there's no way that you can enforce it. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, it's a different world. Where in the USA, I mean, they do everything in Canada. They do everything humanly possible to enforce these things. I saw a video the other day. I think it was in California or something like that, where like a health inspector in the USA was pouring bleach all over the food or something. Man, if someone were to even do something like that, bro, that person would get lynched. I don't even know what to say. That person would just disappear. Like, how dare you do something like that? What is, it's just so many things like that, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like no one would ever have even the audacity to had to even do anything like that out here. Because it's like, okay, you cannot sell the food here, blah, blah, blah. You got to take your stuff and get it out of here. But that's still food that can feed people. And there's a lot of people that need to be fed. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so many things like that. the USA people get arrested, all the time, just for giving food away to the homeless. I mean, come on, man. Come on. So it's just, yeah, look, I see Goldfish. He goes, oh, that person that poured the bleach went to jail. Yeah, look, okay, great. There was some justice served there. But the point is that people in the USA live in a society where it allows people like her and others to think that not only is that okay, but that they have the right to do things like that. It's the mentality, man. It's all about the mentality. And like, why would that not happen in Mexico, even if it were to semi be allowed, maybe like in the USA? Because like I said, the other vendors and everybody, even the patrons, everybody would just beat the bleach lady's ass. Like, what do you like? What? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's just and I could go on and on. You know what I mean? I do. I got tons of videos talking about all this stuff on the channel. But I actually got to get going, guys. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. You know what I mean? I know you guys want me to stay for longer, but I have to get going. In fact, what I'm going to do here real quick is maybe you guys want to continue watching the parade. So if you guys want to continue watching this parade, I'm going to go on ahead and by the way, the parade. Okay, I'm putting the parade link, so in case anyone wants to watch a parade. All right, you're gonna have to back it up a little bit because look, when I go live, I guess it already. Oh, okay, so it's never mind. I guess it already ended. All right, let's catch it real quick. It's a Mexican national anthem, I guess. Look at that. Man, that was pretty cool. Check that out. I don't know if you guys saw. So look, check it out right there in the background. Okay, so you see, this is like in the middle of the town square. This again, this is like the Mexico City. This is the capital, right? And so you see they're doing the show, and yet look at all the way in the background, and there's people walking through there. Again, that freedom. It's like there's no like barricades per se, police. Hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's just like open. It might be on purpose. I don't know. Whatever, but. All right. Again, we're gonna wrap this up, guys. All right. So, anyways, guys, again, I put the link for the parade in case you want to watch the whole thing later on with noise, because the parade's already over. Apparently, we already caught the end of it there. But again, I'm gonna be going live, okay, on my other channel real soon. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little break here, and we're gonna go live in about 30 minutes over there on my other channel. All right, don't mind the time. All right, I know it says, oh, you can't see it there, but anyways, we're gonna go live in about 30 minutes, give or take. All right. So, again, we're going to talk about the 50-year mortgages over there on the other channel. And, well, you can already kind of figure out what we're going to be talking about. All right. We're going to be talking about I guess, the Great Reset or what have you. So, all that stuff that's coming into play. So, again, if you want to watch that, if you want to see me live, again, I'm going live in about 30 minutes on the other channel. I'm going to put a link to that as well. And I'm going to put a link to the channel. All right. And again, I got the parade. In case you want to watch a parade again, we got the channel, we got the live stream, and I'll see you guys real soon. And I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. By the way, little programming note. I am not going to be around next week because, well, next week we celebrate Thanksgiving. And even though I'm out here in Mexico, I got to take a day off or two. You know what I mean? I'm always working. So I'm going to be celebrating with a few friends. We're going to celebrate Thanksgiving out here, Mexican style. And I'm going to be taking the weekend off. I'm planning on uploading a video to this channel and the other channel. Okay, so bear with me, guys. All right. But I'm going to try at the very least to have a video up, even though I cannot be here live for you guys. All right. So again, stay tuned for that. And again, you already know, and I'll see you guys here on Tuesday, on Sunday, when I drop my videos. You guys already know every Tuesday, every Sunday, I upload a video, and every Thursday we go live. But again, this week coming up, no live streams on either channel, just videos, and then I'll catch you guys up in I guess in December. Okay, so yeah, this is the last live stream of November. Wow, time flies. I cannot believe we're at the end of the year already. Ay, ay, ay. All right, guys. So, all right, guys, you already know the deal. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. If you want to see more content like this, check out the rest of the channel. Again, check out my website. On my website, I got tons of free information. All right, you're going to set up a consultation. You can set up a consultation. Again, just click on consultations, and you'll see exactly how to set it up. You got free resources. You can check out again everything on how to rent is it how to find the rental, how to find the job, 20 of the most asked questions, and I could go on and on. Banking solutions, residency, and everything in between, guys. All right. So even jobs. All right. I even got a whole list of digital nomad jobs for you guys. All right. Look at that. You're welcome. Anyways, sorry. But anyways, in fact, if you want to really, really, give me an early an early Christmas gift. My birthday already passed. But anyways, if you guys really want to help out the show and give me an early Christmas gift, do me a favor. Come down to go to my cooking channel. Okay, that's on my regular page there. Go to my cooking channel. In fact, I'll give you guys a link. All right, I'm trying. I'm gonna see if I can try to start this channel back up. All right, starting this year coming up. So again, if you guys are interested in seeing cooking videos, cooking content, then please, check out my other channel. I'm going to hopefully start uploading and putting videos up there starting next year. So within a month or two, a month and a half or whatever. But I want to get to 1,000 subscribers. Okay. I see you guys are still subscribing and liking the videos on there, even though I haven't posted in a while, like 5-6 months. But please try to help me out. Help me help you. All right. If you guys want to see cooking content, I need this channel to get to 1,000 subscribers or as close to that as possible so that we can get that channel monetized. So that way, when I drop the videos there, well, and get some ad revenue for crying out loud. Remember, I gotta feed the horse, I gotta feed the dog, I gotta feed the wife, I gotta feed myself. So it is what it is. And I don't ask for anything. I try not to. I mean, from very rarely do I do. So again, if you want to help me out, go over there. Again, go to both channels. All right. But go over here to Cooking with Jose and please, at the very least, subscribe and maybe watch some videos and so on and so forth. We're trying to get that going again real soon. So I think that's it, guys. I don't know what else to say except I'll see you guys in about 30 minutes on the other channel. Okay. We're going to go live on this channel in about 30 minutes. All right. We're going to be talking about, well, you already know what we're going to talk about. So, all right, guys. Love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. And you already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. Love you guys. I'll see you guys on the next one. Oh, it's over. All right. Bye, guys.